The first scream isn't human. It's the howl of sheet metal as wind knifes through rusted louvers, a torn whistle ricocheting down empty corridors that once stored ammunition and secrets. Eli Carter stands in the doorway of Depot 17 with a paper deed wrinkled in his fist, the ink still damp, $100 gamble stamped in block letters by the county clerk. Rain spits from a cold March sky. His boots crunch on gravel and shattered safety glass. Behind him, Boone, his old blue heeler, pads forward, nose low, tail quiet, as if the dog understands when a place remembers too much. "Let's get this over with," Eli mutters, though the depot doesn't need permission. It breathes. Smells like oil and mouse droppings, like rain-waking dust, like rope that once held weight. Far out past the field, a freight horn moans. The sound comes thin and late. He flicks on a flashlight he borrowed from his neighbor, the beam carving a tunnel through the gloom. Concrete halls, stenciled numbers, a clock with no hands. In one corner, a map of the state curls off a bulletin board, thumbtacks oxidized into tiny red blooms. A sign hangs crooked. "Silence saves lives." The letters are as stern as a pastor. "Daddy?" Grace had asked that morning at breakfast, cheeks pink from the stove. "What's inside a depot?" "Nothing," he lied. "That's the point. Nothing is the shape of today's hope. Nothing is cheap. Nothing is what you buy when the bank won't extend the line and the feed store says your tab is a prayer." So he bought the depot for almost nothing, the price of one good tire. Because maybe its bones could be parted out, because maybe someone would pay for old steel doors and a generator that still turns over if you sweet-talk it. Because maybe, Boone stops. He lowers to a crouch, one paw lifted. "What is it, boy?" Eli whispers. The dog's ears angle toward a distant, steady rhythm. Tap, 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 too regulated for a loose gutter, too patient for a bird. Eli kills the flashlight. The depot inhales. The small sound continues. 3 taps, a pause, 3 taps, a confused, muffled Morse that bleeds through concrete like a secret trying to be born. He sweeps the beam across the far wall. The concrete there is smooth, slicker than the rest, the line of old paint sharp as a razor. Fresh? No, too clean to be honest. He steps closer, rubs with his thumb. Dust smears, but the echo changes. The room responds with a hollow, tender thud. A heartbeat behind the wall. Tap, tap, tap. The flashlight trembles in his hand as the beam skates over a seam that shouldn't exist. Hair-thin vertical vanishing at shoulder height. Eli leans in until his breath fogs the concrete. Boone whines. The air here is different. Cooler, metallic. The cold of something sealed for decades. He presses his ear to the wall. On the other side, the tapping stops. Then softer. A scrape, like paper shifting. A whisper of movement where none should be. Eli steps back. He pictures the month he is running from, a pink notice on the kitchen door, Hannah watching him in the dark, awake, the auction where men didn't meet his eyes. He sees the acres his father left him, land that drinks money and gives back weather. He hears the banker's gentle voice. "We're out of runway, Eli." The depot says, "Not yet." He sets the flashlight on the floor and flexes his hands against the seam. Concrete does not move. Not for men like him. But this isn't just concrete. This is a lie. His fingers find a hairline notch. Boone's nails tick nervously. Eli inhales, braces, and pulls. The seam shivers. Dust rains. Somewhere deep in the walls, a latch sighs. Reluctant. Old. Something gives. When the false wall opens an inch and cold air kisses his knuckles, Eli Carter doesn't think of debt or ruin or pride. He thinks of a voice he hasn't heard since he was 10 years old. His grandfather Ezra's, whispering over a radio at night, teaching him the language of clicks and pauses. He thinks of secrets you carry because people can't. He thinks, wildly, this place is alive. The depot exhales again. The gap widens, and a smell slips out. Oil, paper, cedar, and the faintest breath of tobacco ghosts. Not nothing at all. Before the depot, Eli's mornings start in a kitchen that never quite warms. The kettle hisses. The window over the sink frames a pasture shaved to ribs by winter. Hannah hums while frying eggs in bacon grease, not because there's bacon there isn't, but because habit can flavor a poor meal. Grace, 13, quizzes spelling lists out loud. Noah, 10, owns the solemnity of a boy who knows when not to ask for seconds. Boone sleeps under the table until the toaster clicks. Eli counts. He counts everything now. Gallons of diesel. Bales left in the loft. days until the bank visit. He counts the eggs, 3 today, and the small blessing that Grace is still too young to measure a father against the hunger of a house. He counts the nights Hannah stares at the ceiling and pretends not to worry. He was not born tired. Once he could make a fence line sing by noon and still have breath to laugh. Once, storms felt like a dare. Lately, even wind remarks upon him. He wears the same jacket he wore when his father Amos died, canvas patched and overpatched. He tells himself the men's hold history instead of poverty. The depot is a strange kind of hope. County surplus, abandoned since the base closed. He heard about it at the co-op. They're practically giving them away. He went down to the municipal building, signed a form, nodded at a woman who said, "They're full of asbestos and ghosts," and walked out with a key burned cold into his palm. $100. A lottery ticket in steel and concrete. "Promise me you won't go alone," Hannah said last night, knotting her hair into a weary bun. "I'll take Boone." She smiled despite herself. Boone counts as 2 men. If you're watching this, you know a story doesn't announce itself as history while it happens. It just looks like another hard day. But I want you with us from the start, in the hiss of that kettle and the scrape of Eli's chair on a scarred floor. Stick with us through the rain and hollow halls. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Tell us your weather. And hit subscribe so you don't miss what a false wall does when a tired man pulls the right seam. If you've ever stood in a doorway and felt a place looking back, this is your story too. Eli kisses Hannah's temple and says, "Back by supper." She asks him to take the first aid kit. He says there's no need. She puts it in his truck anyway, along with a thermos and 3 sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. Grace adds a note, "You can do it, Daddy," in purple ink. On the way, he passes fields like his. Winter bit, humble, braced. The depot squats at the edge of all that, half swallowed by sumac and silence. Boone jumps down from the passenger seat and shakes, peppering the wet air with dog joy. Eli pockets the key, breathes, and walks toward a door that hasn't been honest since the Cold War. And then, tap, 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 through a wall, through a lifetime. If you're with us now, lean closer. The seam is waiting. The false wall swings on a pin he can't see, grinding softly, the sound too intimate for metal. Eli eases it open just enough to slide inside sideways, Boone crowding his hip. The flashlight gathers the room like a shepherd. A narrow space, maybe 9 feet deep, running the length of the corridor. Shelving, crates, a single desk bolted to the floor. On the desk, a long-dead radio set stares back with round, unblinking dials. Headphones hang like a question. Above all of it, an artifact of domestic defiance. A cedar slat air freshener tacked to the concrete decades ago. Its scent long spent, but its memory stubborn. "Jesus," Eli says softly. Not the cuss, the prayer. He steps to the desk. The radio is a Collins 75A4, if his grandfather's voice is to be trusted across time. He can hear Ezra now, teaching 10-year-old Eli the way to tune a world from static. "Gentle on the dial, son. Stations are like trout. They spook if you jerk." Beside the radio, a Morse key rests ready, brass dulled by age. The cable snakes to a power strip taped to the wall with olive drab cloth. No juice. Not for years. Still, something tapped. Or someone. Boone noses a stack of canvas-wrapped bundles on the lowest shelf. Eli kneels, slides one out. The canvas peels like old skin. Inside, a ledger bound in black cloth, its cover stamped with a number, and the words, "Property of U.S. Army Signal Corps." A whistle of air leaves him. He opens it. Pages of tight handwriting march in pencil, dates stacked like stacked days. 1953, 1954. Frequencies, call signs, names, some coded, some not. Notes in the margin. Supply delays in town due to strike. Storm front disrupted signal but improved skip after midnight. And underlined twice in a hand that presses too hard, "Do not trust Harlan." Harlan. The word pricks like a thorn. Harlan is a name you hear if you farm in this county. Harlan Quarry. Harlan Storage. Harlan Real Estate. Victor Harlan, whose billboards grin at you like they own your future. Eli turns the page. The ledger goes quiet for 3 days. Then, protocol amended. False wall complete. Ezra C. to handle midnight shifts. Ezra C. Ezra Carter. Eli sags to the floor, ledger open on his thigh. Ezra never talked specifics about the base. He kept his stories to radios and weather, and how to make coffee with a sock. But here, in pencil and sweat, is the fact his grandfather tended this hidden room like a greenhouse for whispers. Eli swallows. His throat tastes like pennies. The radio is dead, but some things carry charge of a different kind. The Morse key rests beneath his palm. The small current of his body seems to wake it. Tap, tap, tap. The sound is dull, wooden. It shouldn't have carried, and yet he heard it. He taps again. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. The old distress. The silence on the far side feels thoughtful, almost kind. Boone paused at the back corner of the room where the concrete is different, a mosaic of patches. Eli shines the light. There, barely visible, a hairline rectangle the size of a bread box. He presses. It yields a whisper. A panel pops free, releasing a bloom of cedar and a drier scent that could almost be money. Inside, stacked metal tins, the kind that used to hold film reels. His hands shake as he pulls one. On the lid, a typed label, 1954, Comms Finance Archive B. He opens it. Inside, envelopes banded with rotting rubber, each envelope filled with certificates and receipts, war bonds and bearer notes, some made to the base, some made out to cash. The top envelope carries a name in fountain pen blue. Ezra Carter, trustee. Eli whispers his grandfather's name without meaning to, as if the air might turn it into a body. He scans the first certificate. Victory bonds purchased through payroll matured decades ago. The interest tables run off the edge of his understanding. He finds signatures, officers he doesn't know, a list, words that rearrange the floor beneath him. Trust for loss in event of base closure, fund to be held in private reserve, dispersed to local agrarian families impacted by operational transition. See Appendix D. He can't breathe for a second. Ezra Carter didn't hide a crime. He hid a promise. Eli opens another tin. Photographs. Men in short-sleeve shirts lean over maps. A woman in a polka dot dress hands out coffee and paper cups to 3 radio techs. Her smile the bright defiance of someone who knows she isn't supposed to be there and refuses to care. Ezra appears in 2 frames younger than Eli has ever seen him. A jaw you could cut rope on. Eyes like winter stars. There's more. A second false back, thinner. Behind it, a narrow metal box with a brass combination dial, stamped with a number that matches a ledger tab. He tries the combination scribbled in pencil on the inside flap of the ledger's back cover. 4/17/10, his grandfather's birthday. The dial snicks. The lock opens with the smug satisfaction of a secret well kept. Inside the box are 3 things: a folded deed, brittle with age, a packet of typed affidavits, and a letter addressed to my grandson, if he ever finds this, written in Ezra's slanted hand. Eli doesn't open the letter. Not yet. He reads the title line on the deed. The words take a long moment to rearrange into meaning. Transfer of parcel. North Ridge pasture. Carter homestead. In trust until conditions met. A seal. A stamp. Names he recognizes from courthouse portraits now long dead and handsomely framed at charity dinners. Boone barks once. Not alarmed. Announcing. Footsteps scuff in the corridor outside. Not memory, not mice. Real, slow, confident. Eli's heart flips. He clicks off the flashlight and pushes the wall mostly shut, leaving an inch to breathe. Shadows move beyond the seam. The smell shifts. Wet wool, cigarette smoke trudged in on someone's coat. A voice clears. A friendly public voice that sells storage units and votes. Mr. Carter? You in there? Victor Harlan? Thought I might find you. Boone stiffens, a low growl like gravel. Eli's thumb goes white on the edge of Ezra's box. He presses the letter to his chest. The depot holds its breath. County records flag the transfer. Harlan continues. Footsteps pausing where the seam is almost invisible. Figured a man in your situation might be interested in a quick offer. I'll be straight with you. Those old depots are liability magnets. Tell you what, I'll give you $5,000 to sign it back. Today. Cash. $5,000. For $100 ruin. Eli says nothing. He can hear 2 sets of feet. One man heavier, one light and eager. A shadow man. Reese, Harlan says softly. Door if you would. Metal rasps. The deadbolt howls. The depot doesn't like new hands. Eli slips the letter into his jacket, palms the ledger closed, and smooths his face into an expression he learned at cattle auctions. Polite, dull, unthreatening. He opens the wall a hand's width and steps out as if he's been inspecting mold. Mr. Harlan. He nods. Boone's growl smothers itself into a yawn and a scratch to keep secrets. Harlan smiles like a pastor's son. Gray suit, barn boots brand new. His eyes are spring water under ice. Pretty, and you'd drown. Beside him stands Reese, 25 and forgettable except for a mouth that likes corners. 5,000's generous, Harlan says, patting a folded envelope. Let me save you some headaches. I just got here, Eli says mildly. Haven't had any yet. Harlan's gaze drifts past Eli's shoulder toward the wall. Not a look so much as assenting. Shame about these old places. People get hurt in them. Paperwork tangles. I like to untangle paperwork. He smiles again, a fraction too wide. Think on it. My number's the one on every billboard, but don't take too long. They leave the way men do when they're certain the house stays theirs after visiting hours. The depot listens to their footsteps go. When the door clanks shut and silence returns, it isn't empty. It's a coil. Eli slides the wall closed and leans his forehead against the cool. He opens Ezra's letter with hands that don't feel like tools anymore, but like instruments. Eli, the first line reads, as if Ezra knew which grandson would come, though he had only one. If you are reading this, I trust two things are true. You found what others missed, and you need it more than I can imagine. The fund is real. The promise is real. The danger is too. Men like Harlan will claim the flag to steal bread. Do not let him. Listen, the law is on our side, but only if we bring it daylight. There's a copy of the trust with attorney Marla Ortega's name at the courthouse. She was 23 when I met her. She'll be long retired now, but the file number is 17B. If it's gone, the affidavits here will start a fire hot enough to warm the right people. Use the radio if you can. Hidden in the table leg is a battery. Tap your name. Eli slides his hand down the desk leg, finds a panel. Inside, a battery pack, heavy and promising. He breathes out. In. He taps his name. Short, long, short for E, and stops, because emotion rises like a hunted thing. He swallows it back down. Boone noses his knee. The depot hums. Outside, thunder germinates. The storm is coming. Hannah doesn't like the look on his face when he pulls into the yard at dusk. Depot dust turned to mud on his boots. She reads him the way a good wife reads weather. Subtle pressures, the threat of hail. He sets the ledger gently on the table as if it's a sleeping child. Grace and Noah lean in, eyes wide. What did you find? Grace breathes. History, Eli says. And trouble. Over dinner, eggs again, the pan singing. He tells them enough. Ezra's name in the ledger. The bonds. The trust language. Harlan's voice in the hall like oil on water. He doesn't mention the sums because money you can't yet use is a different animal than cash. He doesn't mention the way his hands shook when Ezra's E bled into a tear. Hannah's first question is the right one. Is it legal? Yes, Eli says, and believes it because Ezra wrote it like a man staking claim on daylight. But we have to prove it. Then we will, she says, with the plain courage of a person who has already eaten courage raw. We'll call the courthouse in the morning. Who's the attorney? Marla Ortega. Hannah's eyebrows lift. Marla's on the library board with me. Her daughter is anyway. Marla's in her 80s now, but she still writes letters to the editor that make people shift in their seats. I'll call. Boone scratches under the table. Noah slips him the last heel of bread. Grace touches the ledger like a relic. Eli watches his family move around the new center of the room. Not the debt for once, but a door. At midnight, after the kids sleep, Eli returns to the depot with Hannah's flashlight and a thermos of coffee that tastes like resolve. The storm has arrived. Rain drums the roof like Victory Day. He slips back through the false wall and takes inventory. Tins, bonds, affidavits typed on onion skin paper that rattles like whispering grass. He photographs everything with Grace's school tablet, his hands steady now that the work is work. The radio beckons. He rigs the hidden battery to the strip with Ezra's diagram. The dial's pilot light breathes a faint orange. Surprised and loyal, he slips on the headphones. Static rushes up like wind on a cliff. He tunes. Gentle on the dial, son. Somewhere far away, men talk about fishing. A woman in Idaho reads weather like a poem. A ham in Arizona says he can smell rain in the copper. Eli smiles into the dark. He taps the key, testing. Eli. Pause. Carter. Silence for a beat. Then a reply from the night itself. Patient and wry. Call sign. Eli glances at the ledger's first page. Ezra's tidy hand. K4Es. He swallows. He taps. K Freeze, grandson. Found room. Need help with trust docs. County. Harlan. Another pause. He imagines an old man in a shed 2,000 miles away wiping his glasses. The reply comes through like a hand placed on his shoulder. Copy. K Frizz. Name's Walt. Used to work signal at Fort Bragg. Get a lawyer before you get a hero. Take names. Tell no one until papers copied and registered. God bless. Before dawn, Eli has a list. File numbers, names, dates. He labels envelopes, writes a summary in his own plain hand, signs it. When he steps out of the depot into morning, the storm has scrubbed the world down to bone and promise. He feels the kind of tired that doesn't ache. It hums. Hannah calls Marla at 8. By 9, Marla sits at their table, hair immaculate, Kane a skeptical exclamation point beside her chair. She reads the affidavits with a fingertip like a laser. Lord above, she murmurs. Your grandfather had brass. She flips to a page with her maiden signature, barely older than Grace's handwriting. That's mine, she says, voice gone soft. I was a baby lawyer, and he made me swear on my dinner I'd do it right. Is the file still at the courthouse? Hannah asks. Marla's mouth goes thin. Should be. But Victor's been sniffing around the archives for years under one pretext or another. We'll assume rats have been at the cheese. Doesn't matter. We have copies. We'll register these anew. Today. She looks at Eli. You carry it or I do, but we don't mail a thing. They drive together in Marla's Buick that still smells faintly of Chanel and peppermint. Eli follows in his pickup with Boone because he trusts the dog to tell him if the air goes wrong. At the courthouse, the clerk on duty, a kid with a nervous tie, pales when he sees Marla stride in like Time's boss. We're here to record a trust refile, she says, sliding papers across wood, and to log a notice on Depot 17 under protective review. Yes, you can do that. No, we don't need a senior sign-off. Call Mr. Kavanaugh if you need a blessing. She smiles with all her teeth. The kid doesn't call. By noon, stamps thunder. By 1, copies sit in a bank safe deposit box under Hannah's name. By 2, Eli is back at the depot packing tins into new plastic tubs and photographing serial numbers. He thinks of Walt in wherever Walt is, of men who can smell rain and copper. At 3, the pressure arrives. First a white SUV rolling too slow past the access road, then Reese's denim jacket at the far end of the corridor. He doesn't pretend this time. He steps inside with an assumption of ownership, chewing gum like it's a contract. You should have taken the 5, he says, letting a flashlight roam. Still considering, Eli says. Reese's beam finds the radio. Cute. He taps the desk with a knuckle. You play soldier in here? My granddad did. Cute, Reese says again, like he learned one word this week and wants to get his money's worth. Door's closing, Eli says. You'll want to be on the right side of it. Reese smiles with only the right half of his mouth. Already am. That night, texts ping on Hannah's phone from an unknown number. Friendly at first, then impatient, then vaguely biblical in the way men like Harlan get religious when they want your stuff. Eli blocks the number. At 2 a.m., Boone barks, deep and dire. Headlights wash the house, then vanish. Eli sits up with the shotgun across his knees, not because he plans to use it, but because a man sleeps better when a symbol has weight. Morning brings Sheriff Marla Ortega's granddaughter, Lena, standing on the porch in uniform, her hair braided, her eyes choosing not to be impressed by any Carter legend. Grandma says you've got papers and pests, she says. You want me to swing by the depot tonight? I don't want trouble, Eli says, which is true and also irrelevant. You've already got it, Lena says, which is true and useful. They arrange a visit for dusk. Eli spends the afternoon building a door inside a door, a steel bar he can drop into brackets to block the false wall from opening unless you know its trick. He hides one tub of tins under the truck's false floor, drives it to Pastor Welker's parsonage, and asks if the church safe, such as it is, might want to hold a few documents in case of a house fire. Welker, who grew up poor and pious and suspicious of rich men who smile, says yes without questions. At dusk, Eli and Lena walk the depot's spine, boots scuffing a century of grit. Boone pads ahead. Lena listens with a professional ear. Hear that? She asks. Eli hears only the wind. Generators turn over in the middle bay. Someone's been trying them. Smells like ether. They near the false wall. Eli keeps his face blank. Lena flicks her light over the smooth concrete, pauses a heartbeat longer than chance, then moves on without comment. He feels a gratitude so acute it's almost grief. Keep me posted, she says at the door. Document everything. If anybody steps out of line, call before you play hero. She eyes Boone. He bites? Only criminals and salesmen. Same difference, she says, and grins for the first time. By the time stars burn through bone-gray cloud, Eli knows two things the way you know where your body hurts. The trust is real, and Harlan won't let it be. The night of the fire tastes like pennies and wet rope. Eli wakes to the smell before the alarm. Cold smoke, electrical. The insult kind that comes from things made to behave when they rebel. Boone launches from the foot of the bed, claws finding wood. A low howl that isn't for show. The window over the sink flickers the wrong color. He's in his pants before the second heartbeat. Hannah is already dialing. Lena, she says into the phone. Depot. Grace and Noah stand in the hallway like punctuation. One exclamation, one question. Stay here, Eli says. But they are Carters and the word stay is a suggestion. The drive is 2 minutes and lifetime long. The depot rises from the fields like a loaf left too long in the oven. A dark hump with edges glowing sullen. One bay door shivers with orange. Rain begins, mean and late. Eli kills the engine before the access road ends and runs the last 50 yards with Boone a blue smear at his knee. Reese's truck is angled behind the loading platform. Passenger door ajar. Dome light a small polite lantern and all that ugly. A 5-gallon can lies on its side, its breath metallic and drunk. Reese! Eli shouts, voice swallowed. No answer. He kicks in the side door, feeling in his bones the layout he learned with his hands. Smoke lies low. Electrical fire, yes. But there's an accelerant's eager chemical sweet in the air. The middle bay churns with a dark orange lunge beneath the catwalk. Flames licking through wire harnesses that haven't been asked to carry anything in years. The false walls corridor glows like a premonition. Boone bolts left. Eli follows on reflex because trust at some point becomes a kind of vision. The dog noses the seam, whines high, then rams the bottom corner with his shoulder. The panel jumps, grudging. Heat licks Eli's face. He thinks his eyebrows crisp. He finds the notch, hauls. The wall gives. Air rushes. The wrong gift. Smoke muscles into the hidden room like it paid for a ticket. The radio blinks its orange eye. Eli shoves the tubs toward the seam, chooses the ones with Ezra's letter and the affidavits and the deed, because triage is a sin until it isn't. He stacks them just outside, shoves them down the corridor 1, 2, 3. Boone's body a metronome in panic. A shape lurches into the doorway, a man gagging, eyes slashed with tears. Reese. His hair is smoke wet. His right hand hangs wrong. He coughs up a string of language that sounds surprised to be alive. Help me, he croaks. Eli looks at the flame eating the catwalk supports, at the fuse boxes sparking like angry stars. He looks at the tubs. He looks at Boone, who has stopped barking and waits with a dog's horrible, faithful question. Now? Come on, Eli says and runs. He catches Reese under the left armpit, hot, slick, and slings him into movement. Reese stumbles, curses, obeys. They stagger into the corridor as a sheet of heat lopes past like an animal. The radio's orange eye winks and dies. They hit air. Reese collapses to his knees on the gravel and vomits smoke. Eli turns back for one more tub because you never forgive yourself for the one you leave. Boone plants himself in the doorway, refusing. Eli meets his eyes. One more, he says. The dog moves, ceding space because love isn't blind. It just gives. Inside, the false room is a kiln. The cedar slat on the wall releases a last clean sigh. Eli grabs the tin-marked photos and the ledger, and a fistful of what his hand can hold without deciding. The catwalk groans. A beam drops in sparks. He runs like a man with bad knees who remembers he used to be young. Outside, rain chooses sides. Sirens swell from the county road. Lena's cruiser first, then the volunteer engines, then the red ambulance that always feels both hopeful and rude. Harlan arrives too because men like Harlan are allergic to not being the center of a picture. His black SUV slides to a stop, sleeking gravel like a snake. What the hell? He says, stepping into light and rain. Elegant even when God tries to smear him. His eyes tally in a blink. Eli alive, Reese smoking, tubs stacked like a verdict. Lena takes the scene in with cop economy. You two away from the building, she says, not yelling, which makes men listen. She clocks the gas can, the pry bar under the truck, Reese's burned jacket. Mr. Harlan, she says, nodding without liking. Stay over there. Harlan smiles like debate club. I came when I saw smoke from the highway. Did you? Lena says, with a pencil for a voice. Eli wants to sit. He wants to lay down in wet grass and let the night drip through him until he's a clean bone. Instead, he starts talking, because Walt said to get a lawyer before a hero, but sometimes a story has to outrun a lie. He tells Lena about the room, the ledger, the trust, the files they re-recorded, the phone he blocked, the lights at 2 a.m., the dog that doesn't lie. He hands her Ezra's letter inside a plastic sleeve that crackles like conscience. Lena reads fast and careful. Fire crews punch through heat and noise. Foam hisses. The depot moans like it wants sleep. Rain thickens, forgiving. Reese, shaky and stupid with pain, looks up at Harlan for instruction. Harlan's face is practiced, but something in the eye cracks. He steps forward. Sergeant, he says to Lena, a rank he promotes her to because men like him think flattery is currency. This is all very dramatic, but Mr. Carter's made up a fantasy to avoid. Shut up, Lena says mildly, which is a kind of music. Harlan blinks. He chooses a new tactic. Fine. Then, as the owner of the Harlan Industrial Trust, which holds certain residual interests in county properties. Not this one, Marla says, arriving under an umbrella with short, furious steps, her granddaughter on speed dial. She holds up a copy of the refile with today's date big as a bell. Sit down, Victor. You can't. We did. She taps the paper. And you're part of this record now, which means you should stop talking if you enjoy not hiring lawyers. Lena, would you like to Mirandize anyone? Or shall we let the arson investigation speak? Harlan's smile falls off in a single helpful piece. Reese makes a sound that could be 70 words or one prayer. Lena's backup lifts yellow tape like a ribbon in rain. In the glare and stink in the loud hush of men pretending not to overhear, Eli feels something shift. Not fortune, not yet, not justice, never tidy, but momentum. The story that was trying to be born through tap steps into air that will hold it. Boone leans against his knee. Eli puts his hand on the dog's head and lets the heat of it tell him his own name. By morning, Depot 17 looks like a confession scrubbed by rain. Foam beads in puddles. A black wreath of wire hangs where the catwalk lost its patience. The false wall is scorched but standing, its secret now a matter of paperwork and witnesses. Lena's report is lean and merciless. The fire marshal bags the gas can like a trophy. Reese, wrapped and pale, signs a statement that reads like a man trying to bargain with daylight. His lawyer tells him to stop halfway through and fails. Victor Harlan posts a bland message on social media about supporting our brave first responders. Marla posts a scan of the recorded trust and tags every church lady and farmer she has ever loved. The comments read like a town clearing its throat. Stories surface. Ezra helping string lines after the tornado in '62. Amos fixing Harlan's fence for free when floodwaters took half his cows. And Harlan never saying thank you. People remember. They vote with their mouths first. There are still days of work. Bonds become appointments. Appraisals become arguments. Lawyers become translators for dead men's promises. The fund is real, smaller than fantasy, larger than rumor. Enough to settle the bank, repair the north fence, buy feed, replace the truck's back tires so Eli stops white-knuckling every curve. Enough to seat a scholarship at the high school for kids who swear they'll never come back and then do. Enough to prove that what men hide in darkness can once in a while be a blessing. In the courthouse atrium, under a painting of wheat so earnest it could be a hymn, the judge stamps the final order. Distribution as per the trust's appendix, she says, peering over her glasses at Eli. Mr. Carter, tell your grandfather thank you. I will, he says, and means it in all the ways the world allows. Harlan pleads down to reckless endangerment and trespass with intent, phrases that sound like a suit that doesn't fit. He pays a fine that pinches. He loses a contract he'd assumed would outlive him. He drives past Depot 17 without looking for months and then starts looking again because shame is a kind of leash. Reese flips on Victor and flips again when he learns flipping isn't an exit, only a circle. He leaves the county for a year and comes back thinner, working at the feed store head low. Boone ignores him twice, then decides that a man who carries sacks to the truck in the rain might yet be forgiven. Eli could sell the depot for a clean sum, now that it's a historic site with a plaque Marla insists on ordering. He doesn't. He repairs the dangerous parts and locks the false wall open during daylight so school kids can run fingertips over Ezra's Morse key and listen to Walt's voice some nights when the skip is kind. He hosts ham radio classes in the Middle Bay with the new catwalk and lets Grace teach them how to wrap a cable without breaking its little heart. Noah paints call signs on scrap wood and hangs them like prayer flags. On a Sunday after church, they walk out to the Northridge pasture with a thermos and the tin marked photos. They lay pictures on a quilt. Ezra in his short sleeves. Hannah's laugh when she finds a woman in a polka dot dress who looks like her. Maybe she brought the coffee, Hannah says. Maybe she brought everything. Eli touches the ledger's spine. He can feel the groove Ezra's pencil made 60 years ago. The pressure of the word, "Do not trust Harlan." The pressure of a promise he kept on a night when no one was watching. He looks at his children. He looks at the pasture that once threatened to betray him and will now hold a little longer. Maybe long enough to see what Grace becomes when her hands stop counting and start making. The wind lifts. It carries the smell of clover and diesel and wet iron, the county's perfume. In that weather, a man can believe in repair. He takes Hannah's hand. Boone leans, jealous and satisfied. "Come on," Eli says. "There's work. There always is. But the work feels different when it's held up by something besides fear. It feels like building, not bailing. It feels like learning a new frequency, the way the world sounds when you tune your life gentle on the dial and catch a signal you thought you'd lost. If this story kept you till the end, don't let it be the last." Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next true mystery from the edges of America. Like, share, and tell us where you're watching from. We've got more doors to open, more seams to find, and more nights when a steady hand on an old key reminds us. Faith, courage, and loyalty still talk, if you learn to listen.